In your eyes, what do you think is like the best discipline to kind of have? I mean, I'll put it straight out. Like in my eyes, I always say wrestling. That's me, and I just find that, you know, I find with wrestling you dictate where the fight goes.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think it's a hard question because over the period of 25 years of the UFC, that's kind of, we've seen that change. Initially, it was obviously jiu-jitsu with the Gracies. You know, no one had seen that kind of ground game. And then that kind of changed to more of a wrestling, ground and pound, sprawl and brawl, whatever you want to call it. And now we're kind of seeing it come full circle where I think wrestlers or strikers who can wrestle are dominating, the proceedings or dominating the UFC fights. So in my opinion now, if you have a strong wrestling base, of course, but you need to be able to strike. And we're seeing wrestlers who can strike. And again, we're seeing fights that aren't going to the ground, and if they do go to the ground, it's popping back up to the feet very, very quickly. So in my opinion, the best bang for your buck would be to learn obviously a striking art. You have to be efficient and proficient on your feet. Otherwise you're never going to win a fight, but also you need to be able to wrestle. And wrestling doesn't just dictate the clinch, but it's also the getting up back to your feet. So if you can keep it in the range that you're comfortable with, ideally you're going to be have higher chance of winning that fight. But to answer your question, it's kind of a tricky one because MMA is still based around athleticism, how competitive someone is, and obviously their skill sets. So that all kind of factors into what best suits you anthropomorphically. Are you tall and long, so you're going to be a good long striker? Are you powerful and got one punch knockout? Are you really explosive and isometrically strong? Are you suited to wrestling? So there's the individual aspect, and there's also the money ball. What's the best bang for your buck? What are people doing? What's the trend, and what's going to win you fights the quickest? Because we only have a finite amount of time to learn skills, right? And if we're starting a sport, we don't have 20 years to learn one art and 20 years to learn another. So you've got to narrow down what you can learn and be more particular in what you're choosing. For example, if I wanted to be a good MMA fighter, I wouldn't necessarily now go into a first day white belt gi class and learn lapel chokes and a lot of techniques that aren't going to complement MMA. I'd be trying to fast track that and go to a wrestling class, learn how to box, learn how to kickbox, etc., and put it together and go to a gym that does that. And that way you're not you're cutting off the fat and you're kind of getting right to the point of what you want to do, the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, and I guess, what I was saying, though, about dictating where the fight goes, and I think that's why it's so important, is because, if you are faced with, say, a better striker, right, as a wrestler, you are going to find a way to put it to the ground, right? And then you find someone who's maybe better at BJJ than you. As a wrestler, you're going to find a way to stand that thing back up, right? I just feel like it's that good. As I say, it dictates where the fight goes. The other thing that I find with the wrestling is a mindset. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is wrestling's not big over here. It really isn't. And I think that's a flaw in the Australian. When you talk about the Americans coming up in their schooling system, they have so much.
Well, they have the high school wrestling, collegiate wrestling. And one thing I definitely agree with you on is that mindset of wrestling is that grind. It's embracing that. It's that athleticism based with mental capacity. And I think that transfers into MMA very, very well, but it also transfers into the training of MMA, the repetition-based, the mindset. And with striking in MMA, if you're a phenomenal wrestler, which I will agree with you on this point, if you're a great wrestler and you can learn a competent level of striking, I think the intent of striking is actually more important than the technique. For example, you see very good wrestlers whose striking technique or pedigree is not that of anybody else who at a higher level, but they have power, they have speed, they have determination and want to land those strikes. And that counts for a lot, particularly when no one can take you down. And if you have a relentless kind of fitness level and the intent to land strikes, most of the time you will land them.